you starting?
Yeah, you can start by
Okay.
saying who you are and...
Yeah, okay. So, my name is Halvard Iversen, born in North Norway in a little town called Harstad, where I had a very nice family with a lot of love and care and really good experience growing up. My grandparents connected me very early to church, and I've been a religious interested person for all my life, And one of the good things that they did was to teach me to pray, which I did every year, every day. Through my whole life, basically. So I always have felt God's presence in my life. I was been always protected, and I was not surprised that I ended up in the situations that I did, because I felt so much support and push by my spiritual ancestors to do something special in my life. So when I came to Oslo to study biology, chemistry, and so on at the university, then one day, right before the examinations, and I've been reading a lot at the study place there, a young girl came up and asked me about religious interest and if I were interested and so on, which I admitted that I was. And that was the beginning, because I was a member of the Unification Church, and I ended up going to the Center for Lectures. And I must admit that the first time I came there was a lot of quarreling, because I had my very strong opinions about Christianity and the teachings of Christ and all these other things. And Unification Church is not always so much in line with that when you come to essential things for a Christian. But after a lot of struggle, I even decided not to go there again. But I tell you, Spirit World, they really gave me such a hard time. I couldn't stay in my apartment at all. And I started to go round and round and round and round in my apartment, and in the end I gave up and just took off and had to take a taxi to be able to get to the center in time. And actually, this is because also something that I became very aware of very early, that I was sensitive to spirit world. We were living a little apart from actually an outskirts of that little village in North Norway. And I started to realize I could hear people around me that I couldn't see. And as a kid, as long as there were other people in the house, not so much problem. But if my parents tried to leave and I would wake up, and I could hear people in the sitting room and then their steps coming into my bedroom, that was another other story. So I would jump out of the window and fortunately on first floor and run down to my grandparents. So at that time I had no idea what was happening. But when I grew up and I came to Unification Church and started to understand spirit world, then also I understood, who had been pushing me and what had been going on, because I had such an experience since in so many cases, since in situations that spirit world for me is a reality, it's not a theory. So sometimes that scares me, because I feel even in our church we talk about spirit world, but the reality of that I think sometimes is not sinking in. So when when we were sitting there one evening in a room there, and we were reading out of Young Won Kim's Red Book, and Odd Aune, that was then a student of at the university as well. He was the one to guide me, and he had me to read from that book about the second coming. And I was reading about the second coming, and then he stopped me and said, "You didn't really realize what you were reading now. You didn't understand what you were reading now. So read it again." So I read it again, and then I realized what I was reading. And honestly, I felt like the ceiling was hitting my head. I was totally shocked. I was shocked into the inner of my soul. What the heck was I saying? Christ is here. And the strange thing is, I never doubted that afterwards. I never ever said, "Is this true?" Oh my God, I could feel spiritual now. um, and that became a completely change of life. I changed all my plans. I cut my studies, um, and instead of studying at the university, I started to go witnessing in Oslo, and that was not the thing I really enjoyed. I didn't like to bother people, but that's actually what you were asked to do. But anyway, uh, we were lucky enough to have, this was 72, 73. Right after that, three parents announced that they were coming to Europe. And fortunately, even though I was completely new, um, I was invited to come to England to participate in this first meeting, which was in um, under the big tent I think it was in Reading in England. And I was so worried about, who is this person that is supposed to be the Lord of the second advent? And I had my good camera because I was taking a lot of pictures from nature and was sent there also as a photographer. So Father came in and, this young Korean man that was speaking and you couldn't understand a word unless, you heard it through Mrs. Che, that was his interpreter. And I was thinking in the beginning, can I really take a picture? Can I use the flash while he's talking? I was so worried about not bothering this man that was standing there and giving us this really high-spirited talk. And after a while, at least I got the courage to take a lot of pictures which were used later on in publications in Norway. But actually that first experience really got stuck in me. And I remember Father Moon very strongly after that. I also got, not so long time after that, a chance to go to Belvedere. And in Belvedere, I had many, many nice experiences with True Parents because I saw the sincerity of True Parents. We came there and there was a big international group of people from many countries were there. And we were down in the garage, not in the main house, but in the garage behind. That was a lecture hall, And Father would come there every Sunday. At 5 o'clock every Sunday he would be there, and coming out there fully dressed up and nicely close to Mother would often come, and Mrs. Chair first, and then also called, of course, also Colonel Puck. I remember the preparation, and also during that time when we had lectures in Belvedere. We had an elderly lady, actually elder than us though, young people, that was very spiritually open. Helen Danby was her name. And when lectures were given, sometimes she would be coming running up on the podium saying, "Do you know what I saw? Jesus was here, he was standing here during the lecture, or Moses was here, and he got this kind of tremendous reports so often, which really, blew our minds sometimes because, I could feel the atmosphere, but I couldn't see anything, So also one day, I had a remarkable experience because we had unison prayer, which unfortunately I feel more and more is disappearing from our church meetings. But all these young people in that garage, really were praying from their heart. You could feel the whole atmosphere shaking, the whole place. And afterwards, Helen Denby came to the front and said, "Do you know what I saw? When you were praying, I saw the heaven open and the 12 gate, came down and was sitting down on your heads, So I felt this must be a kind of parallel to the Holy Spirit after Pentecost. And I felt the atmosphere, but so after that, I was never in doubt of the prayer power and the power of unison prayer, So I learned a lot of that time. And also, fortunately, Father would come there. And I could see Father's heart because, we would start 5 o'clock. That means that we that were living there hardly slept the night before. because of preparations, you know. And one of the things that I think also was so important was the preparation before the parents came, because um, all the people that are coming, and if you stood by the main house and looked down to this big iron gate in Belvedere, you would see a flow of people coming in from 4 o'clock or before 4 o'clock sometimes for the whole area of New York to come up to hear Father's speech on Sunday. And if you wanted a good place on the floor in front of the parents, you had to be there very early. That meant that we that were there, you had to be at least 4 o'clock. You have to be in place, and then they were singing holy songs constantly and praying, you know, again and again and again and again to raise the atmosphere. You know? And I don't understand sometimes even in our church, people don't understand the importance of preparing for Sunday service and having the right attitude. I don't want to talk about that. Sometimes it irritates me a little, because when you have seen how true Father, you know, will do things, and he is the example of how we should do things, then I don't understand sometimes the compromises that are done. But that's another thing. I guess that comes when you don't have experiences personal with through parents. But that, for me, is what brings God's Spirit. That is what enables Spirit World to move us, to touch our hearts, to give us inspirations. So Sunday service for me is always a very important thing. Father would come there, and Father would speak, and he would give his heart, and his sweat would run down his face, and he would see sometimes that brothers and sisters would have trouble to stay awake, because many hadn't been sleeping, and people in Belvedere living there, you know, you had a really tough schedule, you know, lectures from morning to night, and sometimes little sleep because we had to study also for the tests. And then some people would maybe have a little trouble to stay awake, and Father would start, you know, interacting with people, you know, and go around and talk and try to sometimes joke or whatever, to just make us keep our attention, you know. And you could see really how serious he was of giving his message to really touch us and make us understand what was going on, you know. Sometimes I remember one day I was sitting all on the edge of the stage, and I don't think I had ever any problem with staying awake, because I really was fascinated so by Father. But Father would go by, and suddenly he would smack my head, you know. And after the speech, people came to me and said, "You were really blessed today. You got a special blessing from Father." And I thought, well, maybe that was a blessing, but I think Father more just reached out to somebody he could get in touch with, you know, physically, just to wake up some of the other people around. But anyway, you know, he smacked my head, you know. So that was a very personal experience. And another thing that actually happened also in Belvedere, which actually Belvedere became the final end of my biology studies. I was doing my master's in freshwater biology, fish. But I couldn't go back to my studies at the university, so I just wrote a letter to my teacher, my professor, and say I couldn't come, and he couldn't understand how on earth I could do that. But that was actually my heart, you know. I made the decisions and I did what I felt was right. Anyway, um, in Belvedere at that time, you know, this was in '74.
Sorry,
Yeah.
What prompted you to make this decision? Like, what motivated you to make this decision?
Well, basically, you know, as I said, when I got the conclusion, I knew this is Christ. And I know when Christ comes, you don't hang around doing your own things, you know. When Christ comes, you listen and you follow, you know, because that's what I learned in church. That is what I already saw in the disciples of Jesus. They cut their fishing and they cut all these other things. Even I realized later on there were very few that could do that. But for me, I even cut my planned trip to Afghanistan with my friend that I always even had paid part of the plane ticket for. I cut that as well, and I had to pay for the part of the airplane ticket because it was so short time before we departure, and I even had to do it for my friend because I destroyed his trip as well. But you know, so cutting the studies, that was not really a big thing, even though I know my parents had trouble to take it, because I was the pride of the family that I was at the university, and actually the teacher was a friend of my father, which made it even more difficult. But anyway, at that time in Belvedere, there was no security, But then the negativity had started. So what happened was that mother that was living up in East Garden with her family, they needed security. And I was at the same time as some of these people that are still father's bodyguards, like McDavid, Tom, not Tom McDavid, Mike McDavid. I was in Belvedere together with him. So people were picked up to be guards at East Garden, and I was one of those that were picked out to go up there, and we then were seated in the kitchen and had to go our rounds and take care of your parents. And one day, one of the Koreans there said, he came to me and said, "I have a little job for you." Then he asked me a funny question. He said, "Can you shine shoes?" Say, "Yeah, I can shine shoes because I've been in the King's Guard in Norway, in this very special guard that is drilling and all kinds of other things, and shining shoes." Indeed, I've learned. And he took me up to the hallway where the bedrooms are in East Garden, and I saw many shoes lined up in front of the bedroom doors, and I realized father's shoes were there as well, And good gracious me, did I shine shoes that night? And I was really satisfied with the result. And then the next morning, it was Sunday morning, I knew father would be speaking, and because the weather was good, he would stand on Holy Rock, in the middle of the apple yard, in Belvedere, behind the main house, and all the people would be sitting on the ground. And I just came in time down from East Garden, and father was standing on holy ground. I could see his shoes shining in the sun, and I thought, wow, you did a good job. And then it came into my mind that John the Baptist said he wasn't worthy to carry Jesus' sandals. I said, I did better. I shined the shoes of the Messiah. So that was a very nice experience, And actually, the same night, I got another job. That was to vacuum clean father's big Lincoln Continental in the garage. So I was sitting in father's seat and thinking, well, your parents are sitting here, I realized actually how lucky I was, to be in those places which your parents have been, and really experiencing all the things that the true father was doing at that time, Actually, I had quite a special experience in America, because we sent out fundraising, which was not legal actually at that time. And of course, on my first real fundraising in New Jersey, I stopped a man and asked if he would buy some of the chocolate that we had, And he started to ask me questions, and then he wanted to see my passport. And then he said, "I'm an immigration officer, you're not allowed to do this," And he took my passport. He said, "You come to the office during the week, and you will be, and you have to go back to Norway." And I said to myself, "I'm coming here to Unification Church Education in Belvedere together with true parents. I'm not going home." So I didn't go to the office, even though he threatened me with deportation with guard if I didn't go. So I stayed in America for months after that, and I really had a hard time when I had to go in the end to this office many months later to get my passport. And I'm not going to go through what happened at the office. But anyway, Belvedere time really showed me reality of father, and reality of true parents, and what was going on, because the lectures we got, the friendship that we experienced, the atmosphere that we were living in was such an extreme thing, My daughter said to me once, I wish we had some kind of experiences like this. And I said the same, because I feel many of our younger people don't really understand, what it is to be close to two parents and how tough it is. But that is one of the things that I experienced later on, because not long time after I returned to Norway, I was first a center leader in Trondheim, which is the third biggest city in Norway. And then I was sent to Iceland to take over the mission there. I had a very good relationship with the first missionary there, and we almost competed in making conditions, because I understood very soon that conditions is the only thing that will give results. And I don't want to talk so much about Iceland, but Iceland, the spirit world is very active, and miracles happen there many times. But anyway, not so long time after I came to Iceland, Father came to England, and I was called in to be there as a national leader. And we were sitting there, Father was giving us lectures and sitting, and then at the end of the whole thing, Father started to ask questions about the missions. And then he said, do any of you have economical problems? If I had known what I know now, I would never answer that question. But there had come a direction before asking us to send a representative to the Yoido rally. And since the first missionary had been there for a long time and knew about Iceland, also Moen, as her name was then, I said to her, okay, even though I've taken over, I think you should go, because I cannot represent Iceland in the proper way. You know about Iceland, So she went there, and of course, you had to pay for that. And I tell you, to get the money for that, that was another miracle. But anyway, Father asked that question, and I raised my hand, And Father said, why do you have problems? And I said, well, Father, we were supposed to send people to Yoido, and we had to borrow money. And then Father scolded me. I was completely shocked. I thought I had done the right thing, And Father scolded me, And then, how much? And then I told him how much we had borrowed. Then, here. He gave me the money. But then I understood, Father will always help you, and he's concerned about the missions. But he also wants you to make sure that you know that this kind of support is not really what you should expect. You should try to do things as much as you can by yourself, I have no doubt that Father understood the situation, but he wanted to make sure that I understood that I was serious about these things. And I definitely was, So I didn't suffer much about that thing. But later on, I could go to America several times as a leader of Iceland, because also at that time Father was very interested in fishing. We had already started up fish business in Iceland before actually Father seriously went into that in America. And one time in East Garden, Father was talking about the Good Go boats and the planning the fish businesses, and all the leaders from Europe and the rest of the world was sitting there. And then Father heard that I was from Iceland. And then, he started to talk to me directly, how about the situation in Iceland and whatever and so on. And in the end he said, if I give you a Good Go boat, can you run it? And knowing the Good Go boats, I knew at once, that boat is not very fit for Iceland, because later on we had our own boat, and to be out wintertime in Iceland in an open boat with no shelter, no place for fish and icing and all these other things for the restrictions of Iceland, and then two huge outboard engines that would drink gas like crazy, you would have absolutely no money, you would be working all day. And I said, Father, I cannot use a boat. And Father was surprised, and he started to push me, asking why, whatever. And he really wanted to give me this boat, And says, Father, I'm sorry, but, the boat doesn't fit to Iceland. And in the end, when I told him that the weather forecast in Iceland come 8 times a day, because the weather changes so fast, and the fisherman has to know, Then father gave up, and understood that maybe good boat was not the best, So, but that was another thing, and actually, this kind of connection with fish, many times, had brought me into relationship with father. But actually, before that, there's another thing I wanted to mention when you talk about experiences. Well, father, when Belvedere was over, then, as you know, we bought Berrytown. And Berrytown had not been used for quite a while. So when you come to Berrytown, you saw it was in desperate need of restoration. So father was asking for volunteers to join the restoration teams. And I didn't really want to go back to Norway immediately, so I volunteered for that, having some practical experience, from many different kinds of work. So we were there, and we were scraping plaster and painting and fix. It was such a dusty work that even though we had goggles and all kinds of things, I got infection in both my eyes and I couldn't see for a period of time. I had to go to the doctor. One day father came, and he had gathered the top fundraisers for a special fundraising competition for a project, whatever it was, And people were sent out to fundraise. And then they came back after a few days of efforts, and father came to give out awards for the fundraising. And then we saw this line of fundraisers that lined up, and one person, because father would also sign books, and first he would give out the prizes, and then we would sign the books for the people that had participated. And then some person had a good idea, why don't we join? So we just dusted off some of the dust around and got our book. I got my Divine Principle book that I had bought in America, and we lined up, I was quite in the front of the workers, and they came to me, and father looked at me. And I knew he realized this is not the fundraiser. And then I took the book, Father, you just do things, it's not, So he took my principal book, and he looked at the book, and he looked at me, and then he wrote, his name and everything, and signed him here, back. And then the rest of the workers got the same thing. So I have my Divine Principle book then signed by father. So I'm very happy. It's one of my treasures, for future keeping. So back in Iceland, we started a fish business. We restored a boat. We got a center, and father would call us into meetings in New York many times. I went several times to Alaska, also because one Pilgrim knew that I was studying fish, so he picked me out of a little team to go to America to see the businesses that father had started up then in Alaska, and we had a tremendous time up there. But actually, father also called us in for one very special thing, and that was the end of my time in Iceland after 20 years. We were called in for a workshop, and we didn't even know why, So we came there, and that was late autumn, so already frost started to come. And father would start up then, of course, 5 o'clock in the morning every day, gave us lecture until we had lunch like 9 and 10, and then we were sent out to fish salmon, silver salmon. And then we were fishing the whole day, come home, have dinner, then father would speak until far beyond midnight, and then it was up again to prepare for 5 o'clock again. So a whole week would go like this, So it was not much sleep at all. You can imagine to be out the whole day, coming in, eating in a warm place. And we were staying in father's house in Alaska, in Kodiak. So we were sent to a river to fish salmon. And in America, if you don't catch the salmon by the mouth, you have to let it go. Being well versed in fishing, I stood there and almost, there were so many at the river that we were almost standing there side by side. And I couldn't think, how on earth can you fish in this kind of condition? But the river was full of salmon. So, I would throw out and I would hook one after the other, I would pull in one salmon after the other. None of them were hooked by the mouth, I got them in the tail and in the back and whatever, and I had to throw them out one after the other. One Korean beside me, he got irritated because he didn't catch anything, and he saw me pulling in all this fish, and I got scolded because I didn't fish properly. So after a while, I thought, okay, I have to move out of this place. So I went further up the river, and I found a nice bend of the river when I was standing on the right side of the river, and I was fishing there, and then suddenly a party showed up on the other side of the river, and that was Father and his people, and Father was standing on the other side, a little further up on me, but since the river was making a bend, it was almost like a little pool there. So Father was standing there throwing his line in all directions, and I thought I have to get out of his way, And I threw, and suddenly, his line came across mine, and then he hooked me, I hooked him, and I had to pull in Father's hook, and loosen it from mine and let it go. So I said, this must be the biggest catch I ever caught in my life. I caught the Messiah. so that was another of the things I always will remember, Father standing there waiting for me to get him off my fishing equipment, to continue. So I had a lot of experience, nice experience there. And then when we came back on the last day, then Father really started to talk about the main reason why he called us in. And that was Soviet Union had fallen apart. That was in 92, in September, October, And then he gave us 2-3 weeks to prepare to go to Russia. And all the national leaders were supposed to go. And of course, we were quite shocked, because nobody were prepared. How can we prepare for our families, our missions, anything? And it got a couple of weeks to do it. So there were a lot of concerned people. But Father said, you go to Russia, you get 6 months, either 3 or 6 months, I don't remember, and you establish 2 churches, and then you're finished. I think it was 3 months, he said. So I remember after the workshop was finished, we walked into Kodiak from Father's Hope, North Garden. Went to McDonald's to get the biggest cup of coffee we could ever get because we were all falling asleep. And still I had trouble to get back to North Garden because I fell asleep in spite of all that coffee, You're completely exhausted. So we went home and people were preparing, and of course headquarters started to modify a little of its directions and saying that the national leaders shouldn't go, should find an stand-in and let that person go instead, and you should serve the missions. But at that time, Mr. Abe was in charge of England, and I was under his directions in Europe. And always the faxes would come from European headquarters to England, and then they would pass it on to me. At that time, I had been praying, said, Heavenly Father, I've been here for almost 20 years. I'm dying here, I need change because I cannot continue as the only person to do all the things without having any relief, giving all the services, doing all the teaching. And even though they were members, they were still young, so they couldn't really take up that kind of mission. So I said, please get me out of here. That fax never came to Iceland, So I packed my bags, and before the end of 92, I was in Russia. And then I heard from my wife that Mr. Albert was angry because I hadn't asked for permission to go. But I never got that fax. So I said, Heavenly Father, just many times my my prayers in many funny ways, you know. So and of course, you know, many times members have seen Father from a distance, either when being blessed or when he's giving his speeches, whatever. And mainly then they get, or shall we say, the serious but the good side of Father. I shouldn't say good, but the um, the lighter side of Father. If you are a leader, you will see also other sides of Father, which is really serious. You know? That was the time of going to Russia. Was not the first time I've been in that situation. Many years before, when Father started up the big mobilization in America, we also were called into his garden, and Father was giving speeches. And at the end of that, he said, "You don't go home. You stay for 3 years here, you know." And people were shocked, you know. And I said, "Okay, you know." And the situation with me was that I had cancer. I had operation and radiation treatment and all these other things, and my physical condition was not so good. But I said, "Okay, I'll stay." But Youngwi Kim, President Youngwi Kim, knew me pretty well. I'd been to Iceland, you know, and he knew my situation. So without asking me, he got up and I saw he started to talk to Father, and then they were looking at me, you know. So I got the what should I say, the word from Youngwi Kim, from Father, that I could go home, you know. He wouldn't risk me being in there. But, you know, this kind of surprises you get many times from Father when you are a leader. And you are told really directly to your face, you know, what you are supposed to do and not. When, Mother is quite direct now, and people can start to feel a little about the seriousness. But Father will be even more direct with the leaders, you know. For instance, in the same meeting, I remember Father was trying to get people to take over the mission of the boat building business in biobattery, you know, and he was asking different people, and everybody, you know, would look down. You know, they wouldn't really dare to take up that mission. And then he would come to Paul Werner, and Father, and he said, "Yes, Father," you know. And of course, he took over the mission. And since I knew Paul quite personally, I said to him later on when we came one-to-one, I said, "How can you just take missions like that, you know, just saying yes without even knowing properly what Father is asking you to do?" And so he said, "You know, when Father talks to me and asks me something, I always will say yes. It doesn't matter what it is. And I would pray like a madman for weeks to try to find out what on earth can I do to bring results, you know." And I always remember that because, you know, that showed me this tremendous faith that Paul had in the mission, and especially in through prayer. And he would never even consider to turn Father down when it comes to a request from Father. And he always would know how difficult it was for Father to find people qualified to really high-level missions, you know, because most of us had left our education and everything. And so many times, even when Father tried to find people from Washington Times, you know, people would say, "Well, I was doing this and I was doing that, but I cut that," and Father would shake his head, you know, because he would need people that was qualified to do jobs, and he couldn't find them because most of us were people that had quit everything we had and left, you know, for missions. But Paul was one of those that always would say yes. And another episode with him, you know, when Father started to call in for the special Pantanal fishing competitions, you know, the first time I was there, Paul was there, and Paul had already had really a lot of heart problems, and I saw what kind of pills he was eating in the morning. It was a handful of pills to keep him alive, you know. And I said, "Paul, in your condition, why the heck are you coming to this kind of place in Fort Olimpo where there's absolutely nothing, all is primitive?" He said, "I can never say no when Father asks, you know." And then he said, "I cannot die before Father. That will be infilial, you know, unfilial." Of course, he wasn't able to stay alive as long as Father, but I'm sure Father forgives him for that. But that was the attitude of many of these older pioneers, completely zero in front of Father. And actually, zero in front of Father. Father had the same attitude towards Heavenly Father. Because I saw Father before they have reached the highest level, when still Mother was giving a bow to Father. They would start, both of them, to give a full bow to God, and then Father would sit down in his chair and Mother would give her bow to Father, and then they would join. But what struck me, I saw in Belvedere, in Comberg especially, they did this kind of thing. And I thought, good gracious me, when Father bows, there's not a trace of I am the Messiah attitude, It's a total zero, It was bung down on the floor, completely nothing in front of Father, Heavenly Father, So I learned many of this attitude that I tried to practice from just seeing Father, how Father related to God, and his seriousness towards the mission, his concern for members. Yeah, well, that's another story. One of the leaders, I don't want to talk, say the name, but one sister that I knew pretty well had been part of an early blessing, and she had got a really nice brother I knew from America as her husband, but she could not accept him, And they had been struggling, and he had visited her, and but she couldn't take, one way or another, it was a wall between them. And I saw Father sitting down with her, trying to explain about the meaning of the blessing, the benefits of the blessing, the good character of the husband, anything, And she would refuse and refuse. And in the end, Father said, I will pay for a honeymoon for you, If you can just come together and start to get to know each other. But unfortunately, the sister, even, I could see Father's total heart of trying to help the sister. Unfortunately, she couldn't do it, and she left, And he got blessed to a Japanese sister and had a very nice situation later on. I met him in Alaska, and they were doing very good, and he was showing me around and helped me a lot there. But Father's attitude towards leaders, you could see the deep heart, but also I seen Father's anger, and especially in one meeting when something had gone wrong while Father was out talking, speaking. It was in Las Vegas, and the speaking tour had been really nice, and we expected Father coming there giving us a talk, talking about the victory on the place, but on the different nations. He had come to Ireland, and I had meetings, and I had seen two parents face to face, and had a successful meeting in Ireland. But the person in charge at that time, found out they had to say to Father what had happened. One of his sons had done something actually that they shouldn't have done, and Father goes furious. He's screaming and really physically shaking this man, gripping him by the thigh, and shaking him, And then I said, Father, what is he doing, And then he came in, and he was expressing his frustration. And then he said something that really made me understand Father's heart. He said, I don't want to tell his name, but this person speaks in my name, he said, I trust him completely. So when he says something, I am saying these things to you. And here he had just, physically shaken him and told him off. And then he gives him this kind of declaration. And then I understand. Father's heart is such that he has all these things inside that he keeps. And when he has people that he can trust completely, he will see the opportunity that he can show his frustration. Doesn't mean that he doesn't understand this person's situation, but it means that he feels free to express his frustration over the situation, And then to make sure that people didn't misunderstand, he also told, what is my relationship to this person? This is the person that I totally trust, and because of that I can show my frustration, So Father is not just the person that you see in all these True Parents videos that exist. That when the Korean church makes the publicity videos, and Father speaking, and Father gathering people in these big meetings, and all the big shots around him, and you're smiling and shaking hands and whatever. Father is so much, much more. You know, his concern, his uh, intensity with what he's doing. It's wearing people down. I really admire people that Reverend Kwok and all these people that were close to parents and were given so many missions that survived so long. And some people, of course, they would disappear, but after years and years and years of service, I would never be able to be in that kind of situation. Father demanded so much from people. So people, I'm frustrated because people don't understand seriousness of Father's heart and Mother's heart as well. In the mission, they're coming here to do a mission that Jesus was stopped from doing, a mission that depends on restoring a foundation in such a short time that actually is impossible. They still have to do it. So I understand when Father is frustrated, when Father is sharp, when Mother is sharp, when whatever. I understand it's not because they don't like us or they don't think we are doing our job or don't understand our situation in our missions. It's because we must understand the seriousness of what we are involved in, and also the tremendous opportunity we have. Being together with him, because I know the day Mother is gone, heavenly law will rule. And that mean that there is no coming to true parents and ask for forgiveness. We have to restore the stuff through our own efforts. And then we will think, why the heck did we do more while they are around? And we were again and again given the opportunity to be forgiven. And we have our different things going on in Champion and now around in the different parts of the world when we can be forgiven. We can save ourselves for hundreds and thousands of years in the spirit world if we have the right attitude and understand what's going on. I saw, for instance, one of this time, even in this house, people were given the opportunity to have a forgiveness ceremony. And because of confusions and so on, only an very early morning session was given. And people said, I can't do it because I have to sleep. I got so angry, I scolded the people here, and I'm sure they got offended by me. But being together with true parents, have a little understanding of what it costs for true parents to give us these kind of blessings that they are giving. And then people say, I have to sleep and let the chance go by. I couldn't believe it, I couldn't believe it. But I see that means that people, even in our church, don't understand what true parents are doing, what they are trying to accomplish through a time which is almost impossible. We were also asked to come to Chardin. When I went to Pantanal, I went there 3 times and have nice experience with True Father. When, of course, Father came up there investigating the whole area and was out in his boat, even with his legs that were dying during time because he had to sit crumpled in a little boat. I saw him and heard him. He would come out talking to us. We could have pictures with him and all these nice things, that we experience in the private sitting with Father. But also in Chardin, he came there. And actually, there's the best time in my whole married life, blessed life, because it was not really lecture. It was, you were free to come. You could do things. You could enjoy life. You were shown the area. So many nice things with our family we had together. And then entertainment, and Pat was doing ballet when she was young, and one of the entertainment, she took all the people from Iceland and a couple of more and from Europe, and we had the Swan Lake. We set up the Swan Lake, and even the brothers were dressed up in skirts and white things, and we were dancing like swans there. I think the Koreans were a little shocked because our 2 youngest daughters that also had some basic ballet training, they were dressed up as father and mother, with crowns and everything. And then there was a whole story about the Swan Lake and with the the devil coming in with his bows, and and then the forgiveness and the lifting up the true parents afterwards, But I think that was the reason why when true parents at last came, we were picked out to give true parents the flowers, and of course that was another big big honor, for our family. We could give our true parents as a representative family flowers for them coming to Belvedere and come to Shatim. And actually later on, Father came, actually right after he came, he gave a very high-spirited speech about man-woman relationship, and had a Korean sister that spoke Portuguese to translate to the members, and these elderly ladies who were sitting there laughing at Father's descriptions of relationship with men and women, which became very descriptive, at times, Um, and our whole family was sitting there listening, and the whole group of people were sitting there as well. And then in the morning, Father will come to the main hall to start to talk. And of course, one of the things there where Father would speak very personally about the mission. And then suddenly he would come down from the stage and started to walk among the rows of people sitting in the hall, And then he stopped by my desk, and I realized Father's dressed exactly like me. He had a red sweater on, and white trousers. And I had the same thing. I was sitting there looking at him. And then he said, "Are you a leader of the church?" I says, "Yes, Father, I am. I'm from Iceland." And then Father started to speak in Korean, to me. Because there was an interpreter there, but he had remained on the stage, So I said, "Father, I'm sorry, I cannot understand you Korean, And then Father looked around and he realized the interpreter was up on the stage. And then he changed to his broken English, and started to ask me personal questions about the missions and whatever, And fortunately, it was a Japanese brother that was taking pictures, and I have pictures of Father speaking to Pat and me, and the other people in the hall. And of course, also we had this great opportunity of having our personal picture taken with our true parents outside, which I have on the wall over there. But you see, so many things. Also in the mission, Father, of course, came to Iceland as well. Now, Iceland, I say Iceland, not Ireland. And we had a very successful meeting, a big hall. Mother came later on. I was invited to have a special meeting with her for lunch with Tom Walsh, and also Kukshinim was there. I was a little surprised over his ideas about things, but Mother was also there and was staying a little in the background, but she had lunch with us. We had a very nice meeting here in Ireland, and I could give her sightseeing in town, and of course when two parents were there, they also had brought their grandchild there, and he was around, and we had a lot of ambassadors of peace at that time. And at that time, Father also surprised me by seeing how he could judge people's character directly. He gave the longest speech in the whole speaking tour in Ireland, and he even joked after our 7-8 hours of speaking, his sweat running, saying we may have to lock the door because so people don't escape, But afterwards, the day afterwards, when he was supposed to have the victory celebration with us, then he kind of apologized, And he said, it became another speech because Father had to, short time before, had to go to the airport. And Father said, he was aware the speech was very long, but he said, I saw so many people in the hall from different backgrounds, and knowing this is the only time probably I will be able to tell them, about the most essential thing in life. And I know I would probably have no chance later on to tell them more. So I had to talk about all these important things. And he said, I say what I hear. And yesterday my mouth just didn't want to stop. So that also tells me, Father is not just an intellectual person that think of what can I say now today, what kind of lecture can I give, whatever. He receives from spirit world from God. He's one with God. He received God's heart. He understands God's feelings, and he has the feeling of what God wants to say, and he is just a loudspeaker. You know, it doesn't diminish him, but it's just like Jesus. I and the Father, we are one. You know, so God's concern is expressed through parents. And then another thing that surprised me. You know, we had been working with a Muslim leader that had done a lot of good things for us, but he also was very set on promoting himself. And in the end, he would go his own ways. He would use our organization, and he would do things that I didn't really like, you know. And after a while, unfortunately, it fizzled out because of this. But he was the one that introduced Father, and Father stopped in front of him, you know, and he said, you know, he commented on his introduction, and he said, you know, you have talent for speaking. You can give a lot of speeches and you can inspire people, he said. But he said, be careful. If you make a mistake, you make a big one. You know? So he gave him a warning, and that was exactly what he did. He made a big mistake, you know, later on. You know? But you know, he took the opportunity to tell this person, be careful. You know, you have talents, but make sure you do it in the right way, and that you don't go against the providence, but that you follow what you're supposed to do and do things for heavenly purpose, not for your own. You know, don't make these kind of mistakes for you, and try to lift up yourself on the expense of the mission and the purpose and the possibilities you have been given. You know, so many things. You know, these are just things that are coming to me, but there's so many things I would like the coming generations to understand, you know, about relationship to true parents, who true parents are, you know, because it's missing so in such an extent in our church. And the people now that are joining us, I'm so happy to see, for instance, the prophet in Africa that seem to have really caught the spirit, and that others also seem to understand some of true parents' essence. But think of what true parents have done, and Mother is almost 80 years old. We are running out of time. And if we don't understand the seriousness, there will be consequences. There's no doubt of that, you know. And then we will say, why didn't we understand? And we will be in the situation of Jesus' disciples afterwards, you know, that we will understand our mistakes. I've been close to true parents many times. When I pray, I have to say, I'm sorry, Heavenly Father. You gave me so much. And you blessed me so much. You created miracles in my life. My family is a miracle. Because medically, it shouldn't be possible. And the doctor said it's not possible. And direct intervention by God, we received children. We were told we will receive children. We received children. And I have 4 children. And the doctor couldn't understand how this could happen. So many things in my personal life, I can look back and say, I saw all these things. I witnessed the miracles. I heard true parents. I talked to true parents. I participated in missions in 4 different countries. I saw people and I tried to do, and I'm sorry, Father, I couldn't bring more results. And I'm ashamed that I couldn't bring more people to true parents to make them understand what's going on. Because I, like everybody else, also have all the different experience of being pushed back and rejected and all these other things. And sometimes it's difficult to really go out there with a fresh spirit and say, okay, we try again, and we try again, and we try again. And say, when on earth will it, for instance, the spirit world, I'm praying about the spirit world, why can't spirit world shake up people? Why can't they do to others what they did to me? You know, to really give people such a shake up that they cannot ever turn away from what your parents are saying, you know. Even within our church, you see after a while people get tired. But how can you get tired when you are together with your parents? You know, I'm getting old. I feel my body is failing and all these things. But still, every morning I feel, Father, how on earth can I use this day? And then in the evening, very often I have to say, Father, I'm sorry. The day passed and I couldn't do anything useful. And I cannot stop feeling like that, you know. So I talked to you a long time, you know. So I think I just finish here and just hope that if people find an inspiration, you know, will want to have some inspiration and understand a little more of what happened in my life, there exists an autobiography, you know, that I have written down, and I know, you know, it is possible to get hold of it and explain some of the things I talked about, you know, in more detail. Because the spirit world worked, true parents have worked like crazy, and I'm afraid to say we don't understand still, you know, properly. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. I just have one question, because for me, at the end of the day, like the mission life and like understanding true parents, like I think the core, like the core value what true parents bring is that through the change of blood lineage,
Yeah.
We are able to actually experience the intended forums of heart that God wanted us to experience, like God wanted Adam and Eve to experience, and to pass on this experience to us. So, how would you, from your viewpoint in your life, say that you've managed to have that parent-child relationship, and then brother-sister relationship, and husband-wife, and as a parent afterwards?
You're touching a very sore point in many ways, because being in Pioneer, being sent to missions, like in Russia where I was 2.5 years, my wife had to struggle alone at home with 4 kids, with no economic foundation but the money she can get from the government and child support. Many situations where we were separated, where you have no chance to even see your children's birthdays and whatever. My family life suffered. My relationship to my wife suffered. You know? I read Father's words and I understand if you sacrifice yourself for a higher purpose, then it kind of, you know, straightens out the things that didn't go so wrong, they go so well in on the lower levels. But still, you feel things are not to the level. Even my husband-wife relationship is not as good as it could have been, you know. And even though I have all my children blessed, they have families, whatever, and they are doing good work and whatever, still, sometimes I feel too distant because of that. Because I feel, you know, their whole childhood passed by, and I could not really take care as I should, you know. I was stuck in missions here and missions there, and this was supposed to be done, and this conference was done, and always busy with something else. And I see people have, even now with my grandchildren, I see the parents are out and enjoying time with the children and giving them ice cream and going to fairs and doing all the things I would have liked to do. And I couldn't do it. And I feel sad because of this, because it also had an impact on me, you know. And I feel even that I cannot even relate to my grandchildren as I should, because, you know, when you look at the different the different generations, even within my family, there are also there different levels of understanding, and and I'm an impatient person, you know. So sometimes I demand things, and sometimes I also demand things from others, even without saying. And when they don't do it, I feel, you know, kind of closed off, you know. So I have a lot of, I said I'm 74 now, and I said I have so much still to do with my own personality, and I don't have time, you know. We became a jumbo couple, but I look at that plaque that is on the wall, and I know, okay, Mother accepted me as a jumbo couple because I blessed so many people, so many generations that went out. They gave holy wine to hundreds of people, and I did all these things. But still, on the personal level, I feel I'm not up there, you know. And I know when I go to spirit world, how can I say I can go to kingdom of heaven? You know, because my heart is not in kingdom of heaven. And many times when I pray, my thoughts go here and they go there, because that is how spirit world has worked with me. You know, I get all kinds of inspiration from everywhere, and sometimes I had to say, "Shut up!" You know, give me peace. You know, and sometimes I get up from my prayer and says, "Waste of time." because I couldn't concentrate on the things that I should do. So on the personal level, I feel I have a long way to go. You know? I had all these experiences, and I think, why on earth couldn't I confirm more to the heart that the true parents have? You know? I've become more the kind of person that has understood the push of true parents and want to do that. And there was a period of time when UPF was doing very well here, you know, because I was pushing and I was out there and I was contacting all these people. But, you know, many times I was not artistically on the level that I should. And even in my own family, I'm suffering from that. And maybe they're also suffering from me being like that, you know. But I hope in the end, at least I have some merit that will make up some of that situation, you know. But that's reality, you know. And I feel most of the people, we are trying to do the things we can, but we are still in a situation of pioneering. And there will be compromises, and there will be difficulties, and we will be disappointed, and we will have to pull ourselves together again and do things again and again and again. Still, even though the situation has changed a lot.
Okay, another question then. Now, you know, you mentioned that you feel certain regret about not having certain personal experience. So if you had an opportunity to go back and do it again, how do you see the value of having done and having lived this life compared to, you know, just going about your profession and developing your personal life in fishing and
you know that would not even be a question, you know. I would never have chosen the other way, you know? Because from the very beginning, when I got the conclusion, that was it. That was the absolute cut. That was the change of heart and direction and everything else, and I would never dream about going back, you know. I would maybe do different things differently, especially in the earlier part of a mission, because, you know, you had to find your way. Like for instance, in Iceland, I came from Norway, and Norway done certain things, and that was even the German tradition where the leaders were kind of treated specially and whatever. I couldn't do that ever, you know. So I went to the opposite in Iceland, you know. I was the person that pulled everything, you know. And even though I had good members there, I never put them properly in charge of things. So I didn't give them the opportunity to develop through their own actions. They would do the things they were asked, but they wouldn't have the benefit of conceiving of an initiative and do it and grow from that, you know. They would do home church and stuff like that, but there was too much leader follower. So when Pat and me went to Latvia, we did the exactly opposite. We had learned from the situation in Iceland, even though Iceland, you know, there were good things there. I even brought the prime minister and the minister of foreign of economy and so on to ICUS, and Steingrimur Hermansson became a very prominent person in UPF, you know. But when we went to Latvia, where we could come together as a family again, we took grandparents' position. That means we took the counseling, we took the teaching, and the elder members of the church were doing the daily running of the church, and that worked, you know. So from a few members in Latvia, when we came, after a year and a half, we had almost 50 active members, you know. So that was a member explosion in Latvia. Unfortunately, we couldn't stay there, you know. But of course, also there are a lot of negativity, and even on national TV and all kinds of other things. But still, I have contact with some of the members from around the world, you know. And they came here to Ireland when when we moved over here, you know. So I have learned through time, but still, you make mistakes. You know, you make mistakes, and your personality. You know, because of your personality and your ancestor and your background and everything, you make mistakes. You know? But
one last question, because True Father said, I remember in some speeches, when you give up your kind of professional life and professional development in the kind of the fields that, you know, professional training is provided, and when you do join the Unification Church and do activities in Unification Church, you're actually graduating in love, and you're discovering love and becoming a professor or a teacher of love. So how would you say, like, Do you think this has actually become like your kind of qualification?
You know, Tinko, love for many people is supposed to be just emotions. And you see, when people nowadays are ending up in a relationship, uh, they marry and then they divorce, you know, because love is supposed to be you caring for me, you know. You love me, you take care of me, you know. So actually, that understanding of love becomes very self-centered. But actually, the love that Father is teaching is living for the sake of others. That means sacrifice. And if you go into Father's teachings, then you see that the whole thing is about forgetting about yourself. It's the actually opposite, you know. So, so that means that uh, when you read Father's words, even Father is talking about you must love this and this and this more in your life with your family. And actually, Jesus said the same thing. You know, you have to love me more than your brothers and sisters and father and you know, well, that is the part which is really important, but it's so difficult to understand that the love two parents are talking about is this the emotional clinging to some other person to be taken care of and comforted and all this other thing, which actually is a part of love, of course. But it's more, are you willing to go out of the way, of your own way, to take on other people's concerns and difficulties and trouble, you know? According to Father, that is love, you know. So in many ways, it is an emotional thing towards that person. But many times you also will find you do it because of obligation, you know? And that is also a lack. That is also a part where you have to develop, where you have to be able to connect to that person and do it out of love. And that is actually one of the things I will say I am failing in one aspect, because I said I'm a person that get a lot of inspiration from spirit world. I'm an impatient person, and I want to do things now, not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow. And because of that, I have a tendency to push, and that means sometimes even people would be pushed away, you know, because of that. You know, so to combine three parents' understanding of love and God's understanding of love, and the desire to feel somebody loves me and honors me and take care of me, sometimes difficult to come together, you know, because it's basically two different aspects that's not so easy to unify. You know?
Okay, just to clarify this, so the love, you can say the true love that true parents talk about is the living for the sake of others, and the love that this world considers, or the content or the meaning of love which this world considers more like self-centered. So would you say that by sacrificing many things and devoting yourself to God and to mission, you have learned a lot of God's love, and it has given you that qualification to see things from that perspective, compared to if you didn't commit like to this kind of life?
Of course. You find a lot of good people around. For instance, now I'm here in this small society. I'm working with different organizations that are doing good work socially, you know, and they're investing themselves for others, you know, and many of them are more like on the socialistic side, doing things because it is the right thing to do. And I know they will benefit more from their life than many of the Christians I've been trying to talk to here, that believe in Jesus and think they are going to kingdom of heaven. When I read John Sung Yong, you know, here, I see, you know, believing in Jesus, okay, good. But if you don't put into practice in daily life what Jesus said, you know, your understanding and you believing Jesus will benefit you very little. You know? Of course, something you will have, because if you really love Jesus, you will also try to love other people, because that's the message. But I also see a lot of people that think believing is enough, you know. And that is one of the first thing I understood in our church. You know, faith is good, but faith must motivate you to put it into practice and do the things that the parents are telling you. Even sometimes, even if you don't like it, at least you have to try to do it from obedience, which is very often my driving force. Regrettably, because I should have done it by heart, but I did it from the sense of obligation, of responsibility, or call it whatever you like. It was not because I really cared for it, but I did it anyway, and I hope that will benefit me something. But as I said, I feel personally I have a long way to go, and I say 74 years old. How many more years do I get? Do I get 10 years? I don't think I get 10 years. And if I haven't accomplished a spiritual development to the level that your parents want me to have during all these years from 1972 when I joined, how on earth can I manage it now when my body is falling apart and I just have a few years left? I will go to spirit world, immature, no doubt of that. And just hope that the people that got in touch with me during my life got something that could at least clarify the understanding of the meaning of true parents and who they are and the importance of the time we're living in. I just hope some kind of legacy. That's why I wrote my autobiography, because I feel my experiences must not just disappear, because it was not just my experiences. That was God working in true parents' time and got in touch with me. So the aspect of the grace that came from God through true parents that came to me, at least I hope that can inspire some people to change their lives to do the right thing. Because look at the world. We really need that.
Yeah, I think from this point of view, like just listening about your life, I think you're even out of obligation, like you feel you've done many things out of obligation, but I think because you were there and you did impact true parents' work and you did impact the lives of many people, it's fair to say that there is a lot of inheritance from your work left.
You know, that is the thing that I know. I have good ancestors. I experienced the push. So my spiritual foundation was good. And also, even in all the struggles in myself and in the missions, miracles happened, which I have unfortunately not a chance to talk about now, but really miracles.
So do you want to have one more just about the miracles?
Well,
that would
maybe
not today.
Yeah, maybe we could talk about later on. But honestly, there are so many remarkable things that happen. So I know, that spirit world still worked with me. I know I felt God's presence and love. So I know I was not rejected, and I know God understood, my heart even at that situation, and said, "Okay, you are trying at least," and I got support on that foundation. So as long as I not felt completely alienated from, from God, at least I knew there was something that was done wrong or done right. So I'm not despairing of my situation. I just feel I could have done better.